Hello, everybody. I'm Marty Rosendale, the CEO of the Maryland Technology Council, and this is a special international edition of the live Capital M Zoomcast. With the Maryland Life Sciences Bioinnovation Conference coming soon, we thought we'd take an opportunity to look at technology transfer resources in Maryland. Our sponsor today is the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation. The MCEDC is a premier public-private partnership focused on helping businesses thrive in Montgomery County, Maryland. The Maryland Technology Council is the industry trade association representing the technology and life science industries throughout Maryland. Together with our members, we're improving the business climate in Maryland and helping companies that save, secure, and improve lives around the globe. If you're considering commercialization in the US, we can help with advisory support, key connections, and informative educational opportunities. And there's no better entry point for the US life sciences markets than Maryland. Before we get started this afternoon, I have just a few housekeeping items. Your microphones will be on mute. We'll be using the Q&A and chat functions to ask questions today. You'll find those icons at the bottom of your screen. So please type and send your questions. I'll be monitoring both the Q&A and the chat as the discussion proceeds and be able to interject the questions where it makes the most sense. This Zoomcast is being recorded and will be made available for others to watch or listen to at a later date. So thank you again for all of you for joining us. And again, our topic today is a guide to technology transfer in Maryland. My guests are Brad Stewart, Senior Vice President of Business Development for Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation and Chair of the Maryland Life Sciences. Stephen Ferguson, Special Advisor to the National Institutes of Health Office of Technology Transfer. Stephen Kasouris, Executive Director, Technology Transfer at Johns Hopkins Technology Ventures. And Ken Porter, Director of the University of Maryland Ventures at College Park. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you, Marty.
So let's just take a minute. We have an hour today to cover a lot of ground. So let's take a minute and let each of you introduce yourself, talk a little bit about who you are, how you got to where you are, the organization that you represent, and how someone would engage with you. And Brad, why don't we start with you this afternoon?
Well, thanks, Marty. I appreciate that. As you mentioned, I work for Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation, and my role is to help companies who are either in Maryland or interested in being in Maryland, particularly in Montgomery County, be successful here. Obviously, one part of that is the huge opportunities that exist here with NIH, FDA, and other federal labs to engage with them for technology transfer and other related items. Certainly one of the things we can help with. From a little bit about myself, in addition to chairing the Maryland Life Sciences Organization, as you mentioned, I've spent my career in the life sciences industry, primarily on the commercial side. Although my training's in science, I've spent my whole career running life sciences companies, particularly on a global scale, and most commonly ones that are commercial stage. I've done that across small molecules, orphan drugs, large molecules, in vitro diagnostics, done a lot of work in corporate strategy, and additionally, I've had a lot of experience negotiating technology transfer agreements, licensing agreements, cooperative research agreements, those sorts of things. So hopefully I can help answer some questions, give some tips and tricks as we go through the discussion.
Great, Brad, thank you. So Steve Ferguson. Tell us a bit about your background and the organization that you represent.
Sure, thank you, Marty, and welcome everyone to our program. I'm Steve Ferguson. I'm with the Office of Technology Transfer at the National Institutes of Health, the NIH, where I'm part of the Intramural Research Program. It's roughly the $4 billion of R&D money that we keep ourselves for our internal R&D to generate new technologies and development to transfer to the private sector. My own experiences that I'm involved with patenting and licensing and commercialization activities at the NIH now for 30 years, but my previous work has been in industry and in various marketing, product manager roles, and my origin, of course, was originally as a bench scientist, so I could connect with both the laboratory work and also the commercialization aspects. So we're very pleased to be here, part of the program. My other work at NIH is that I'm department chair at the NIH Graduate School, where we're trying to train the next generation of scientists to be more cognizant and comfortable with working in industry and commercialization.
Great, thank you. And Steve Kasouris, same question, a little bit about your background and the organization that you're representing.
Sure, Marty. Steve Kasoris. I work for Johns Hopkins Technology Ventures, which is the venture arm for Johns Hopkins University. I am an alum of the university, graduating from their School of Public Health a number of years ago. Most of my career was spent in managed care, and I've been with the university at Tech Ventures now for 9 years. I spent the first 6 years as the CFO of the group, and then 3 years ago took over as the executive director.
Great, thank you. And Ken?
Thank you, Marty. So I'm Ken Porter, Director of Ventures College Park. We manage the intellectual property portfolio for the University of Maryland College Park and support sponsored research, working with companies as well as government agencies and starting support companies. I started my career as a chemist, had an invention, got interested in intellectual property and technology transfer, and worked at several offices in the US and Canada. Came to College Park 2 years ago, and we're having a good time here.
Great, thanks, Ken. So Brad, I want to come back to you. So you represent an economic development authority, and you interface with the other gentlemen that are on the call with us today. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you work with companies, a company coming into the US through Maryland? What does that work look like, and how do you engage with those companies?
I think for us, it's always trying to understand what the company's needs are. We have a tremendous number of assets here in the state of Maryland. The problem is we have a tremendous number of assets in the state of Maryland. And so trying to understand how to navigate those, how to work with people, and even to find opportunities. And Steve will probably talk about this in a little bit, but even if you just think about the National Institutes of Health, the number of just licensing opportunities that exist there is almost insurmountable for people to try and figure out and navigate. Part of that is due to structure. They are typically aligned with the Office of Technology Transfer within each of the institutes. And so there are different groups you sort of have to look through to understand what it is you're looking for. So what we try and do at MCDC is help people understand that. We try and sit down with people and understand what their needs are, what their goals are, what their objectives are, what's realistic, and what the opportunities are. Sometimes that's, once we know that, these things aren't always intuitive. It's then knowing, well, gee, if you're interested in X, where would that be at NIH? Is it at NIAID as an example, or NHLBI, all the different institutes that are there, which aren't very clear alignments, or is an opportunity available through the University of Maryland system or Johns Hopkins. In addition to that, we also try and help people look for research opportunities. We'll talk about this later on, but there's a huge opportunity here to do work with NIH through their SBIR and STTR programs, through the University of Maryland, through their Mips programs, or through cooperative research with any of the institutions here.
Brad, thanks. So Brad, just quickly, how many federal labs are there in Maryland?
I'm going to get this wrong. I think there's 74. I think that's the official answer.
That's the number I have. Just wanted to put you on the spot there.
I was either prepared or got lucky for the pop quiz. Thanks, Marty.
Sure. Steve Ferguson. So tell us about the NIH, the portfolio that you have, why it's important to engage with you, and how somebody engages with you.
Sure. So as I mentioned before, it's the work of the world's largest biomedical research organization. So we're kind of like a smorgasbord or a buffet, biotech buffet, as you were. There's something here for everyone. As Brad mentioned, there's certainly funding opportunities for US companies and SBIR and STTR program, but there's also things such as resources and information like the Library of Medicine that can access data sources. There's activities related to research collaborations and also license agreements. We're very excited to talk about international collaborations today in this program because earlier this week, one of our international licensees, BioNTech, along with their partner Pfizer, received a full FDA approval for the coronavirus vaccine. So that makes us now probably 36 FDA approved drugs and vaccines that are coming from our intramural program, the part that the R&D program. And so it's kind of a good sense as to what you can really do with these types of activities. There's funding, collaboration, resources, and also recruiting your next group of scientists. We, as an institution that has 400 to 500 postdocs in a given year. Those scientists are also looking for future careers, and often that can be with industry. So I think it's kind of a opportunity for just about any biotech company, any pharma company to work with us. And if there's not something here in one disease area, well, we have programs across 27 institutes. So we pretty much cover the whole gamut of either all parts of the body or every sort of disease area. So again, something here for everyone.
Steve, you said you have programs across 27 institutes. That's a lot of research and a lot of intellectual property. If somebody is looking to expand or strengthen their own IP portfolio, how would they go about finding the right property, intellectual property to license?
Well, it's one aspect is that we do have a good track record of completing these types of transactions. We have currently 2,000 active license agreements and 200 people involved with working on them, putting them in place across our institutes. So we have a central portal through our office, the Office of Technology Transfer. You can do a search, but also we do have through various literature sources. You can do, our scientists are very active in publishing, so you can find scientific context there as well. And so you can work it through sort of both ends of the marketing channel, as it were, from the ground up, based upon the science, or from opportunities that will publish. But you can be assured that we have some experience in doing this, and there's some advantages of working with us in terms of maybe other partners where we're not requiring you to sponsor research in our laboratories. We're not going to ask for equity, so we're not going to mess up your cap table, and we're not going to be asking you for co-marketing rights. We expect our partners to handle that end of the business, and so that's really the value of working with us, is that you can really do what biotech and pharma companies do best, and that's really to develop and commercialize early stage inventions.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to come back a little bit later and dig in a little bit more on the small business innovation research grants and small business technology transfer grants as well, because I think that's going to be of interest to others. So Steve Kasoris, tell us about Johns Hopkins and your portfolio and how somebody should engage with you. And I think you may have a slide. Right?
Yeah, I'll share the slide in a couple of minutes, but let me first talk some about what JHTV and Johns Hopkins is all about. The Johns Hopkins Technology Ventures consists of about 70 employees, and we support all 9 schools of the Johns Hopkins University. We're split into 3 groups. There are about 50 of our employees are involved in tech transfer. That's my group. We also have a very active startup support group that we call Fast Forward, and another group that is involved in doing corporate partnerships for corporate sponsored research. So we're very active in all 3 areas of the tech transfer experience. As I said, there are 9 schools at Hopkins that we support. About 80% of our business comes from the School of Medicine. The engineering school represents another 15% or so, and the other 2 major schools that we are involved with are the arts and sciences, chemistry, physics, et cetera, and public health. We get about 450 invention reports a year. We have a patent portfolio of about 3,500 patents. We do 150 or so licensing agreements a year and another 5,500 material transfer agreements every year. Last year, our startups raised over $1 billion in venture and IPO capital. And our corporate partnerships group has raised over $150 million in industry sponsorships since 2014. And we have 37 current industry sponsors that we're in partnerships with. I think Hopkins has always been well known for its technology in therapeutics, diagnostics, medical devices, and the life sciences areas. Emerging areas that we are seeing a lot of new technology in are areas like energy, precision medicine, artificial intelligence, assured autonomy, and speech and language processing. So those are areas that the university has invested heavily in bringing new world-class faculty, that we are seeing some technologies emerge out of those faculty today. At this point, I'm going to share, I'll share a slide that will have the web addresses for those of you who might be interested in seeing how to contact us. There are 3 web pages I will point you to. Our homepage, which you can also get to pretty easily just by Googling JHTV. And that's the key page to get to any other information about our group or any of the 3 areas that are involved at JHTV. If you would like to search our technologies, the address is technologypublisher.com. All of our available technologies are up on that website. The search tool allows you to search by keyword, by faculty member. When you find a technology that you're interested in, there are downloadable PDFs describing that tech, and there will be a link to the email address for the licensing associate who is involved with that technology. And if you are interested in engaging with us on the licensing side, that's the easiest way to do it. Search there, find technologies or faculty members that you are interested in, link into the licensing associate, and the licensing associate will help take it from there. If you're more interested in a broad category, I think the process that I'd recommend is pretty much the same. Find technologies that are a close match to what you're looking for and reach out to the licensing associate there. You can always contact me and I can do some of that work for you, matching you up to the appropriate person, but welcome you to do some of the searching yourself. That's what we built the tool for. The third link is to our annual report. We just published this year's annual report. It has many of the statistics that I rattled off earlier and some other information about who's who at JHTV, and again, some of the emerging technologies that we are seeing come out of the university. And so I think I'll stop there and turn it back over to you, Marty.
Steve, thank you. So I just want to let everybody know, if you didn't have enough time to write all that information down, I believe we can send it out to the attendees of this webinar. This will also be recorded, as I mentioned earlier, so you can go back to the recording and look it up again there. Steve, before we move to Ken, you mentioned something that I want to dig a little bit deeper on, and that's the amount of capital that spin-outs from Johns Hopkins have raised. How does the tech transfer department, the Johns Hopkins Venture Group, how do you work with companies to raise capital? Is it just the power of Johns Hopkins intellectual property? What drives that kind of capital raise?
Thank you. This is something that we're actually pretty proud of, our recent success in this area. If you go back several years ago, our companies were not very successful at all in raising venture capital. When we expanded fast forward, an effort that started maybe 7 or so years ago, we brought in folks from industry and from venture capital firms who knew how to speak to those people and to help our startup CEOs and faculty members speak the language and do the pitches that are necessary to raise that money. So we have increased geometrically the amount of money that our startups are able to raise. We do it by having our own staff, using our own staff's relationships with the venture capital firms so that we can make introductions and get relationships started. We do it by coaching the CEOs and faculty into how to do effective startups, effective pitches, and how to create good pitch decks. And we just try to nurture the process as it goes along.
Great, thank you. So Ken, tell us about Ventures and how somebody would engage with you and your organization. And I know you also have some slides. Would you like us to bring them up now?
Yeah, now would be fine. Thanks, Marty.
Okay, great.
I can start. Okay, that was quick. Thank you. The University of Maryland, we are a state institution. We have 12 individual institutions in the system. The 2 largest research institutions are University of Maryland College Park, where I am, and University of Maryland Baltimore, where our professional schools are. So our biotech, similar to what Steve's just been talking about, is mostly in Baltimore. That's where the School of Medicine is, School of Pharmacy, School of Dentistry, and also School of Law. In College Park, where I am, Oh, and I can also connect you with my colleagues there if you have an interest in those types of technologies. We share a website, umventures.org. And so there'll be links to UM Ventures Baltimore and also to links to UM Ventures College Park, where we are. So College Park, we're the flagship campus for the University of Maryland. We're where the undergraduates are, the 40,000 undergraduates on our campus. As far as research, we have research expenditures of about $530 million, and they're spread across 12 colleges. Prominent amongst them are the College of Agriculture, College of Engineering. We have arts and sciences and business there too. Most of our work at UM Ventures is done with the basic sciences and engineering. About 80% of our work, 80 to 90% of our work, some about 10% in agriculture, and the rest spread amongst School of Public Policy, School of Public Health, and the other colleges on campus. I think that gets us through the first slide. Can I have the second one? And there are three principal ways that you can work with us. You can license technologies that comes out of the $500 million research enterprise. You can sponsor research and help create technologies through our research enterprise, or we can start companies. And so I have a slide for each of those. And again, I'll direct you to the website, and you can search technologies, just like Steve was mentioning. You can search the technologies. Our staff at UM Ventures is 15. And the contact information is also available on the website, and you can contact us, and we will take you through the IP portfolio, or if you just want to tell us what your interests are and what problems you need solved, we can point you to the right resources, whether it's an IP that we already have in the portfolio or IP that could be developed through jointly sponsored research. We licensed 27, we executed 27 licenses last year, and so we can give you a personalized experience for any of the technologies that you'd want to work with us on. And you can see half of that, but Marty will send you the slides, and you can see the whole website that there's at the bottom for the search page. The next slide, please. You can also sponsor research. So corporate sponsored research on campus last year was $13 million. And an interesting thing that we have just implemented over the last couple of years associated with corporate sponsored research is how the IP is handled. So any sponsored research agreement, the IP provisions are always the most highly negotiated and sometimes contentious points of the agreement. And so as you can see, we have three ways to approach that. A is the standard way. So the usual way that IP is handled in corporate sponsored research is the research happens, the IP is created, and the sponsor gets a limited term option to license that technology. And we can do that just fine. But we also have options B and C, which are prepaid licenses. And so the sponsor can prepay a set amount in each sponsored research contract and get a royalty-free license, nearly royalty-free license for any of the IPs that's developed over the course of the project. And so you can have a prepaid non-exclusive license where 10% of the budget is paid in advance for access to non-exclusive licenses with a 10K floor. Sponsor pays the patent costs. Or option C is a prepaid exclusive license. And again, sponsor pays the patent costs, sponsor gets an exclusive license to any of the IP, and the only compensation back to Maryland would be after annual royalties exceed $20 million, we'd expect a 1% royalty. So that's kind of a, yes, only tremendously successful IP would bear any royalty. So that's how we go about sponsored research. And if I could get the next slide, we could talk about startups. So we started 7 new companies last year. We have 45 active companies currently. There's the website for our startup support. And we offer kind of soft startup support and harder startup support in the form of capital. So for the softer side of things, we have incubator space. We can help you find a CEO. We, of course, manage the IP. One wonderful resource we have is entrepreneurs in residence. So these are really seasoned entrepreneurs that we pay to advise our startups, and the startups get this advisory service, consulting service for free. We have $15,000 in Amazon Web Service credits for all of our startups. We'll help with SBIRs. Marty had mentioned that. I'm sure Steve will talk to more about SBIRs in a minute. We have an angel investor network, and we also have business workshops, and that's been it's been a boon to our workshop series of the remote workplace. whereas in-person workshops are limited to a dozen or so people. We usually have several dozen people at our workshops since we put them online. The topics range from HR, accounting, finance, etc. And we also record them and put these workshops up on YouTube. So you can start taking advantage of our workshops today if you'd like. We also have available capital. So there's the NSF I-Corps program, Lean Startup Approach, that comes with $50,000. That's a 6-week program. That's a national program available to anyone. But we also have a Maryland I-Corps that's free to our startups. It's a 2-week program, and it greatly enhances the chances of our startups getting into the national programs. We have a state funding office, TEDCO, that supplies up to $265,000 in funding to our startups. The first in 2 tranches. The first one toward the proof of concept stage, that's a grant, and the second one towards company formation that goes in as convertible debt. We also have a Maryland Industrial Partnerships. That's for any Maryland company that wants to sponsor research on our campus. We'll pay for the sponsor, or the Mips program will pay for the sponsored research up to $90,000 with a $10,000 match from the company. So that's not necessarily with UMD IT. It's UMD faculty working with a company that wants to come in and accomplish a project. And then finally, we have an investment fund, the Maryland Momentum Fund, that'll co-invest with venture capitalists or angels up to $250,000. So again, that's a quick overview of the services we provide. I encourage you to look at our website, contact anyone. All of our contact information is available there, and we'll walk you through and point you to the services that are most likely to support your venture. Thank you, Marty.
Ken, thank you. So that's quite a menu of assistance that you presented there. But you mentioned specifically I-Corps. Could you just take a minute and explain to the attendees what I-Corps is?
Yes, it's a lean startup approach that is the program was systematized by the NSF and offered broadly across the U.S. Starts with customer discovery, minimal viable product, all of those lean startup terms that help businesses, product and market fit. So help companies formulate their ideas and their business model canvases before they're seeking money, or even many employees. So the first step towards starting a company. And unique in Maryland is the 2-week program that we have really experienced instructors that take you through a condensed version of the I-Corps program to really get you ready for the national program, or for just company formation without the national program. And just yesterday, we were named an I-Corps hub. So we have a $15 million 5-year project to offer I-Corps to the Mid-Atlantic region. It includes a network of about 10 other universities.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think I-Corps is probably the best customer discovery training ground that I'm aware of. I think it's a phenomenal program. So all 4 of you have mentioned funding in some form or another. And before I go there, just want to remind everybody watching us today that you can put questions or comments in the chat room, or use the Q&A if you have questions you'd like to bring up. But specifically, you've mentioned SBIR and STTR grants. And so, Steve Ferguson, I'd like to come back to you. And if you would, explain a little bit about, what is this funding? What does it take to get it? How does it work? And how would somebody pursue it?
So yes, Marty, there's actually 2 programs. SBIR is Small Business Innovation Research. That's the original program. And then a new addition has been the STTR, Small Business Technology Transfer Research. The difference between the 2 is that the SBIR is, they're the principal investigator for the research project is at the company. STTR, it's principal investigator could be at the university, and it's more of a university company partnership for the funding. So basically, it's a grant given by research agencies. So if there's a research agency, not just NIH, that has an intramural research program, a certain % of their budget is set aside for grants to companies. So most grant programs are open to both domestic and international institutions. SBIR programs are really for US-based companies. So our international listeners will have to keep that in mind. in terms of having an affiliate or work with someone who is US based as part of the project. But basically, these are early stage work. Phase one is typically $150,000 to test something out. And phase two can be several $1 million to sort of build the prototype and test it further. So what's, I think, particularly interesting for the people in the audience would be is that for NIH, since we won't be buying these products, these are typically grants that are given by the program. So that means that it's a grant, then it can often be your ideas. So when we do the solicitation for these programs, we have suggested topics, but we also are very interested to hear your ideas. So it's a good way for a company's proposal to get some initial funding, initial valuation, because these proposals are peer reviewed. So you have a peer review process to go that. And most importantly is that when we receive the funding from us, unlike perhaps other sources, it's non-dilutive, it's not a loan, it's not convertible debt, it's a grant, and you don't have to pay it back. We're looking really to see the results be commercialization, not a repayment of a loan in terms of that activity. Again, supporting public health.
Great, thank you. So, so Ken just notified us that there's a storm building where he is, and we might lose his internet connection. So Ken, to come back to you before that happens, you mentioned support for SBIR and STTR grants. But what does that look like? How does a company get that support, and what does that support look like?
Well, again, just ask. So ask for the support, be a Maryland company, and we can get you started with your SBIR application. And we also have access to the Small Business Technology Development Center that has a network of folks spread all across Maryland that helps not just University of Maryland companies, but any company in Maryland access the programs we mentioned before, plus the national programs such as the SBIR and STTR programs.
Okay, and we do have a question, Ken, that's probably best aimed at you. Again, before the storm hits you, and that question is with respect to quantum technologies and quantum AI. Are there grants available? Are technology transfer opportunities? I know that the University System of Maryland, University of Maryland College Park in particular, has one of the world's strongest quantum clusters building there. So what are the opportunities in quantum?
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. One, I was going to mention a couple of our startups, but it is becoming we're developing a critical mass towards quantum. We have the world's first publicly traded pure play quantum computing company, INQ, set to go public in the next few weeks. So we're really proud of that company. And it's going public is probably going to release a lot of executives for entrepreneurship opportunities. So as far as finding a CEO, College Park might be the place over the next couple of years. But we're also putting research dollars and research effort. We have a quantum institute that's joint with NIST, has over 200 researchers in it. So there's lots of active research going on. And then with respect to forming companies, we're forming a new quantum startup foundry. I don't have the website, but I'm sure you can search for that. And it'll include incubation services, accelerated cohorts, access to capital, and access to the researchers at the University of Maryland. So quantum startup foundry.
Great, thank you. And Steve Kasoris, coming back to you, you mentioned Fast Forward. That's an amazing program and an amazing facility. I've been out there a couple of times. What kind of assistance can a company get through that program?
The Fast Forward group is primarily to support Hopkins licensed startups. We've built over 40,000 square feet of space that's available to our startups, office and laboratory space. As you may know, it's difficult to get private outside of the university lab space in the area. We, similarly to what Ken described, we are very active in I-Core, and we are also very active in SBIR, STTR funding. We do the same kinds of support. We give our startups mentors in residence to help do business planning. We help with grant writing, experienced grant writers. We provide all of that kind of support to them. So the staff of Fast Forward, in addition to the venture capital raising support that I mentioned earlier, comes from various fields, and we've also arranged for help from outside firms that are sponsors of the Fast Forward group. For instance, in early stage, a startup might need some help from a law firm to get their documents taken care of. We have law firms that provide pro bono support early. We have accounting firms that will help with some of the early stage setup from the accounting side. And so we're really trying to provide a full range of the kinds of services that a young startup will need, and to do that as efficiently and at as low a cost as possible.
Great, thank you. Brad, I want to come back to you for just a minute. There's an SBIR matching fund program in Montgomery County, correct?
There is.
So how does someone access that?
So the Montgomery County has what was the first county matching grant program in the country. And so for people in Montgomery County who get a SBIR phase 1 or phase 2 grant, and just to add on to what Steve said before, a lot of us from the biotech industry think of phase 1 and phase 2 as in the drug development pipeline. A phase 1 grant is your first early stage grant through the SBIR program. A phase 2 grant probably and very easily could be still for phase 1 type research with the drug, but is a much larger grant given after you've performed on your phase 1 grant. So Montgomery County has a program where if you receive either a phase 1 or phase 2 grant, you can apply to the county for matching funds to help support that. And those are basically provided on a first come, first served basis each year.
Thank you. And Brad, when you were introducing yourself, you mentioned CRADAs, Cooperative Research and Development Agreements. What is that?
It can be a lot of different things to a lot of different people. I think we've heard that from everyone on the panel here. It can be a variety of different types of research, typically where you're wanting to partner with either a university or a group like NIH and do cooperative research. That can be defined different ways, where you want material support from them. They could be doing more technical parts of work for you. University of Maryland has the Mips program, Maryland Industrial Partnerships, where you actually can contract them to have researchers at the University of Maryland do research on your behalf or in partnership with you. So it can mean a lot of different things depending on what your circumstances are. Steve, what are you going to add?
Yeah, Steve Ferguson.
So basically for the NIH, it involves collaborative studies, but it can be both preclinical or clinical work. So it kind of fits that entire spectrum. And working with some of our programs, I mean, I don't think people realize that, for example, the National Cancer Institute is the world's largest holder of INDs. So we have a pretty good track record for helping companies, helping projects go through final stages of preclinical and early stages of clinical. So there's that aspect of it, but generally it's what we're talking about is for early stage companies often is at the discoveries phase. And so that's sort of a program where we would have a joint collaboration on something of scientific interest to both parties. And our partner, the company, typically would have an option to exclusive license. So if that joint study is successful and creates intellectual property, they will already have the option in their pocket for an exclusive license without having to go through a competitive process. So it's a great way to take projects through. We've had some success stories, for example, from those CRADAs like Taxol or hepatitis A vaccine, to give some famous examples. But again, it's a way to help for companies to leverage the research, the resources that they have, and also leverage the resources that the NIH has to help that, because we're really looking for success come meet unmet medical needs, and we know that's going to involve private sector work.
Great, thank you. Steve Kasoris, are these types of cooperative research agreements available at Johns Hopkins as well?
The We're, as I said, very active in industry-sponsored research agreements. Our corporate partnerships group is actively looking for those kinds of arrangements, and we have 35 partnerships that we're involved in right now.
Thank you. And Ken, you also mentioned corporate sponsored research.
Right. So corporate sponsored research is available to anyone worldwide to partner with our scientists. There was a message in the chat about some of the other resources that I mentioned, and most of the research. Let's see, if you remember my slide on the top left, were resources that are available when you're starting companies based on UMD research. But some of the money is available more broadly. So NSF, SBIR, of course, is available all across the United States. The UMD program is available to Maryland companies, and also the development services, the Small Business Technology Development Center, so SBTDC, people can check out those services. Those are available to Maryland companies. The TEDCO grants are available to Maryland companies working with UMD intellectual property. The Mips program is available to any company in Maryland working with a UMD researcher.
Great, thank you. So gentlemen, we're coming up to 45 minutes here, and I do want to allow some time for questions and answers. Is there anything that we haven't covered this afternoon that you would like to bring up before we move to the Q&A?
Marty, if I can, I just want to give people a frame of reference. So we talked about the SBIR, STTR programs because our expectation is many companies listening are smaller companies that are looking for ways to get involved in research. Again, as Steve mentioned, these are for US-based companies. Frequently, ex-US companies will establish a US entity to become eligible for SBIR grants. But just to give you a sense of scale, these come from almost every major research institution in the government. For NIH, as an example, their budget for SBIR, STTR grants is over $1.2 billion per year. So it's a very substantial pocket of money. And as Steve mentioned, it's aligned with their research agenda or priorities that they publish each year. But it can be in places you wouldn't always expect. Quantum computing, here in Maryland, we have the National Institutes of Standards and Technology, NIST, who has a lot of interest in quantum computing, the Department of Energy, which is located here, very similarly. So it's not always intuitive who the people are out there doing research on a federal level from this perspective. So it's helpful to try to get a sense of the landscape and start to look around to understand that.
Thank you.
And Marty, one of the things we haven't mentioned is that perhaps the Federal Laboratory Consortium.
Mm-hmm.
I think Brad mentioned there are 74 federal labs in Maryland, but across the country, obviously there are several hundreds of these. And so part of the issue is that, well, where do you start? You'd like to work with a federal partner for some of the reasons I've mentioned, either in healthcare or physical science and different agencies. So a good place to start would be the Federal Laboratory Consortium, which is managed out of the National Institute of Standards and Technology in Gaithersburg, but is a grouping of all the federal laboratories. It has a central portal that you can make connections there, and so place to start. So, you know, obviously maybe some of our listeners would know about the CDC or the FDA, the NIH, but they may not know about the U.S. Army Medical Material Command or the Naval Research Laboratory. So there's a number of different opportunities there where they can help sort of be a matchmaker and sort of help you get started in terms of where in the federal system would you start? Because even 74 in Maryland could be a little daunting at times as well.
Right. Thank you. Steve Kasouras or Ken, anything that we didn't cover that you'd like to bring up?
No,
Nope.
I think we're good.
All right. So we'll open it up for questions and answers. So if you'd like to ask a question, please put it in the Q&A, or you can put it in the chat room as well. And while we're waiting to see if there are going to be any questions, Delegate Lily Chi did put a comment in the Q&A about SBIR matching funds at the state level. So I would just like to point out that there was legislation passed last year that would allow SBIR matching funds. That legislation is not funded yet, but we will be working diligently this year to get it funded make that opportunity in addition to what Brad was talking about with respect to Montgomery County. So gentlemen, we've talked about a lot of things and covered a lot of ground. Each of you represent institutions that have a lot of people, a lot of researchers there. Are there opportunities for people to just come and meet those researchers? At the Maryland Tech Council, we do networking events. We provide opportunities for people to connect. Many of your researchers attend those events, but I'm just curious. I know at Fast Forward there's opportunities. I know University of Maryland there's events. What kinds of opportunities are there for people just to come out and collide with your researchers and get to know them?
Well, at the NIH, we have something called the NIH Research Festival, which is held on the Bethesda campus in the fall, and then also there's one at the Frederick campus, along with the Frederick National Lab and the U.S. Army at Fort Detrick laboratories in the spring. Now, this is all sort of contingent upon healthcare situations with respect to COVID, but that's been the traditional way where you could actually attend those or even set up a booth at some of the exhibit tents at those conferences. In fact, we have coming up on, I believe the 1st, we have the Frederick Showcase. It's going to be showcasing some of the work of the Frederick National Lab, which supports the National Cancer Institute and Allergy and Infectious Disease, as well as some of the National Cancer Institute research as well. So people can tune for that to get a little more acquainted about some of the investigators and some of the programs related to oncology, if that's their area of interest.
Great. Thank you.
We skipped last year because of the remote workplace, but in the spring we have a Maryland Day where the public is invited to come in and interact with students, faculty, and other researchers. And then directed more towards the startups and entrepreneurial community, we have Innovate Maryland, which is also in the spring and features awards to our innovators and our startup companies, and we have CEO mixers and all kinds of wonderful activities to invite folks that want to learn more about our entrepreneurial ecosystem.
That's great. Thank you. Hopefully by spring we'll be able to come back together in large groups.
We're planning on it.
Steve Kasoris, how about JHU?
On the Hopkins side, most of our get-togethers have unfortunately been dampened because of the COVID restrictions. Prior to that, we had a cooperative program with the University of Maryland called Anchor Ventures, where we were getting together quarterly with guest speakers, usually startup CEOs or people from the industry. And those were very well attended. It was a great chance for people to mix. Fast Forward also has ongoing mixers or lunches and those kinds of things for its staff that the public is invited to. And I hope that those will get started up again soon too.
Great, thank you. So Ken, while I've got your mic open, there is a question asking whether you could speak to the Applied Physics Lab. What that is, what opportunities might be there.
I think that was for me, right, Marty?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Steve.
Yeah. The Applied Physics Lab is affiliated with Johns Hopkins, but it is not part of the university. Johns Hopkins University gets well over $1 billion a year in research funding, and the Applied Physics Lab equally gets over $1 billion a year of its own research funding, and it has its own tech transfer office. One of the reasons that the offices have been kept separate is that much of the work of APL is defense oriented and secret. And so, and much, if not all, of the university's work is meant to be distributed widely to the public. So the cultures of the two organizations are somewhat different in that regard. And I, for one, wouldn't want the Defense Department work to be handled by my group, who is much more sharing. So there is great technology coming out of APL. We get to see a lot of that technology, and our office even handles some of it. When I guess the difference that I see between the university technology and the physics labs tech is that our technology tends to be early stage and quite basic. We're very much a basic research institution. The APLs tends to be much more applied, that's their name, and ready for market, or even already the product has already been developed and sometimes tested in the harshest environments possible. So when they're ready to release something to the world, it's ready to go out. So they have their own website, very Googleable, and I would encourage you to go there as well. They put the technologies that they have available to market up on their website as well.
Great, thank you. So Steve Ferguson, there is a question that came up in the chat room. You mentioned federal research, and the question is there a link or an entry point if somebody's interested in getting involved or learning more? Is there a place for them to go? Right,
so you would, it's called the Federal Laboratory Consortium, and it would be at federallabs.org. So you should be able to find it with your search engine pretty quickly. That's a nice entry point. There's a lot of interesting stuff, some tutorials, educational materials, and also coming up next spring, we'll have our national convention, and it'll be in April in Cleveland, Ohio. So chance to see the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and maybe pick up some federal technology transfer, same trip.
Sounds like the spring is going to be a great time for networking all the way around. That's great. All right. Well, there is one more question here, and I'm not sure if any of us have the answer because it's related to an agency not represented on this call. But that is, are any of you familiar with whether or not the FDA has tech transfer or is very strong in that space?
I can speak to that because until very recently, we handled all the FDA work at the NIH. So the FDA has, it's not well known, they do have their own intramural research program, and it's now a separate office at their White Oak campus, again in Maryland. So you can contact them directly. If you come to our site, there's a listing that can then redirect you. So you might ask, well, what is the FDA doing in making inventions? Well, they've had a very good track record. They made some of the key chemistry that for the first generation antisense molecules, the phosphorothioates. And also they've been very active sometimes in vaccine production technology, which resulted in very, very key vaccine used in Africa for meningitis A called Menafrivac. Again, 2 examples of technologies coming from their program, which many people aren't aware of because they mostly thought about obviously as a regulatory body, but they do some really good work at the bench as well.
Great, thank you. Steve, there is a question to you. You mentioned the event coming up in the spring in Cleveland. Is there a place where people can go to learn about that? And I don't know if it requires registration or how that works.
Right, so I think, I don't know which hotel it's at yet, but if you go to the Federal Laboratory Consortium website, that would have the latest information about that. I don't think registration is open quite yet for that, but we're all looking forward to getting back to Cleveland.
Great, thank you. So gentlemen, we're coming up to the top of the hour, and I don't see any additional questions that have come in. So first of all, I want to thank you all for your time and your attention this afternoon. This has been a great discussion. To those that have been in attendance, that have been watching, I realize that we've covered a lot of ground, and you probably do have a lot more questions. We will be able to circulate the information that was shared on this webinar. The webinar, as I said, will be recorded, so you can go back and watch it again. If you have colleagues, friends, or peers that you think would be interested in this information, please direct them to the website at the Maryland Tech Council, mdtechcouncil.com. That's where they'll find this recording and be able to watch this webinar in full. I'm hopeful that I'll see you all at the Bioinnovation Conference coming up on October 4th and 5th. And again, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Appreciate all the work that you're doing support for the startup community and economic development in Maryland in particular, and all of the work that is making the world a better place to live. Thank you so much.